Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. My name is Cameron Lawrence and we are back with 7 must starts for Week 17 Championship Week, our final must start video of the season. And hopefully you aren't like me and you're sitting in that third place game sulking because you had the same guy, Mr. Tyler Plath, knock you out in 2 different leagues on your way to the championship. That's where I am. So I'm feeling you if you're not sitting championship, but hopefully you are, and hopefully I can give you 7 players to help you win that championship this week that need to be in your starting lineups. I don't want to waste any more of your time, but make sure to hit that subscribe button. Make sure to turn on those notifications because we are going to win you the championship with these 7 players. And we're going to start off at the quarterback position with Mr. Kyler Murray. He'll be at the Philadelphia Eagles this week. Philadelphia has struggled in one place all season long, and it's against the pass. It's against the quarterbacks, and it's against the wide receivers. Philly is allowing the 3rd most points to the quarterback position over the last 5 weeks, and they're allowing a ton of points to the quarterback position on the season as a whole. And last week, Kyler Murray, I know, again, he might play without Hollywood in this one, but last week he did as well and still scored 20.4 fantasy points against the Bears defense, who has been playing very, very well as of late. And Kyler Murray is back. He's running the ball 5+ times a game, and every week, except for week 12, some games 6, he's ran up to 9 times in a game. And he's had 20 fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games. So Kyler Murray's back. He played well without Hollywood, and now he's in a plus matchup where he's going to have to throw the ball a lot. I want Kyler to be in my lineup this week, and I hope if you're making that decision, Kyler Murray or banged up Trevor Lawrence, you lean Kyler Murray. Moving on to our first running back, we have Travis Etienne versus the Carolina Panthers. I know if you've had him, I'm feeling the pain too. Back-to-back weeks with single-digit points after he had that tear earlier in the year. Come on, Travis. We need a little bit more, but this Jags team as a whole has struggled, especially these last 2 weeks. Trevor Lawrence has just not been feeling well. He's had a concussion, ankle injury, now shoulder injury in this last game. And if you watched him against the Bucs, he did not look right. Hopefully he gets back, or they have C.J. Beathard who's in there. But anyways, Carolina has been much better against the run since the beginning of the year. At the beginning of the year, they were a smash start. Since then, however, they've gotten better, but their offense is still not good. They're still a plus matchup, which means a lot of positive game script, which means you're going to run the ball a lot, which is good for Travis Etienne, who saw only 6 rush attempts last week against the Bucs because they were down by so much. Jags have been getting beat up in those last 2 games. Etienne, however, is still showing that he has good receiving upside, so good receiving upside in a game where you should see a lot of carries. I like Travis Etienne in this one to get a lot of work to try and get this Jacksonville team really back on track. Our first wide receiver we're going to talk about is Rashee Rice versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And I'm going to keep this pretty simple. Rashee Rice has been great the second half of the season. 5 straight games with double-digit fantasy points and 9+ targets in each. Cincinnati's given about 180 yards per game to wide receivers. That's 10th most and 38.8 fantasy points per game over the last 5 games. Kansas City is at the spot right now where they are either going to have a get-right game or they're just not going to be able to get back right. They have looked bad these last couple of weeks, and I think that Vegas game was kind of the tip of the iceberg. They're either going to sink or swim at this point, and I think they do get back into it. So I would want Rashee Rice in my wide receiver spot, whether it's my flex, my wide receiver 2, but he should be in your lineup this week. And even if they don't get back, I still think he has a very decent week. At tight end, one guy that you should plug in that you may not have had the confidence to do the last couple of weeks is Dallas Goedert. I know last week was his first double-digit point game since returning against the Giants, but let's be honest, this Arizona Cardinals team is not much better against stopping anybody in general. So I would want to plug in Dallas Goedert. They've given up the 9th most yards to tight ends over the last 5 weeks. And Goddard's seen 9 targets in each of his last 2 games. I think Philly's in a similar spot to Kansas City where they just need to get right, where people are starting to worry about him a little bit, right? There's been a little bit of turmoil. Some of the comments coming out from Jalen Hurts of, is this team actually mentally in it right now? I know they just won against New York. last week, but it was a lot closer than people thought it should be. I think Dallas Goedert gets involved in this one. I could see him definitely scoring a touchdown here. Dallas Goedert's a guy I would be plugging in your tight end position, especially if you had a guy like TJ Hawkinson, who's now out for the season. Dallas Goedert's a guy I would feel comfortable with at the tight end spot. And our second quarterback is Mr. Brock Purdy. He's playing against Washington, and let me tell you, that's a good matchup. Washington, 32nd ranked defense, just gave up 31 points to a Trevor Siemian-led Jets team last week. And Brock Purdy, I know he played awful last week, right? We're not going to excuse last week. If you're against, I'm not against Brock Purdy being the MVP last week. You're like, yes, this is what we needed. He can't be MVP anymore. But I'm not going to hold it against him. Right before that, 6 of the 7 prior weeks, he had 20-plus fantasy points. And now he gets Washington, who is the worst pass defense in the league right now. So I want to start Brock Purdy. Before I move on a little faster, I just want to show this hat off real quick. Mrs. Lawrence, my wife, she gifted this to me for Christmas, and I like it. So I want to hear you guys' thoughts on the cap down in the comments. Just says Fells, little cream color, green bill. I think it's pretty solid, pretty slick. But let's move on to our next running back. It is Mr. Joe Mixon. He will be playing at Kansas City against Rashee Rice, who we talked about earlier. I know last week wasn't great. Trust me, he was in my starting lineup as well. Travis Etienne, Joe Mixon, 2 of my starting running backs. 2 of the reasons that I'm in this third-place game. Last week wasn't great, but he's still heavily involved in the passing game. He's still seeing a lot of work. I know, and I want to recognize that last week he did drop below 60% of snaps, but that's because Pitt got up early. They got up quickly, right, and they were in front this whole game, so Chase Brown was more heavily involved. I don't necessarily see that being the case, even though I do think it's going to be a get-right game for Kansas City. I don't think it's going to be 24-3 like we saw in that Pittsburgh-Cincinnati game. I think it's going to be decently close, but I think the offense for Kansas City is going to keep this game moving, meaning Joe Mixon will see plenty of opportunity on the ground, many opportunity through the air, and Kansas City has allowed 5.2 yards per carry over the last 5 weeks to the running back position. So I like Joe Mixon in this one. And our final player goes along with Brock Purdy. It's Mr. Brandon Aiyuk. I think Mr. Aiyuk has been overshadowed by all of his other teammates, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey on a given week. It always feels like he's the second or third best player each week, but that's because everybody on that team, including Christian McCaffrey, is scoring 20-plus points. Feels like they have 2 guys each week, but in 7 of his 8 last games, Brandon Aiyuk has scored 13-plus fantasy points in PPR. He scores touchdowns. He sees targets. He's exactly what you want for fantasy football. And like I said with Brock Purdy, he's in an amazing, the best matchup you can ask for the wide receivers and quarterbacks against the worst pass defense in the entire NFL. All right, you guys, with that, I hope you enjoyed our must starts. I hope you are in that championship game. I hope that these guys can help settle your nerves of who do I start, where do I go. And I hope we win those chips. That's the reason we play the game. That's why we're here. And if you're like me, I hope maybe you win that 3rd place medal, you know. It doesn't feel great, but hopefully you win. And if you're avoiding a punishment this week, I wish you the best. I hope that if you've got any of these guys, you can plug them in and that you avoid that punishment. But with that, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit that notification button. And best of luck. Deuces.